am in Spain, and for you track spotters out there, I'll give you a few seconds to figure out exactly where in Spain. I am, of course, on the Triumph Street Triple 2023 launch. I'm stood next to the RS and the R, and sadly, Chris is in Portugal, so I have the task of test riding these bikes both on the track, which is of course Jerez, and on the road. Now, Triumph say that these are more agile, more powerful, better handling, and better looking, and I'm going to go and find out. I've got here early in Jerez, the sun's coming up and the circuit is going to be open in a couple of minutes, and I'm going to ride the RS for the first time on circuit. Now, I'm very new to the Triumph brand, so I'm really keen to see what this feels like as a fresh perspective. The RS, that's 128 brake horsepower, a smidge over, compared to the R, which is 118. The R's got a really good Brembo system, but the RS has got a slightly better one, MCS on the front and the Stylema calipers at the bottom. Slightly upgraded suspension, Öhlins back rear, whereas we've got the Showa system on the R. And the RS has a slightly raised seat height, so it's going to make it a bit more nose responsive. So I really want to see how that handles and its agility on the track. So like I said before, I am new to Triumph, I'm new to triple, so I can't wait to hear that triple scream and actually see how it moves on the circuit. So I've just finished my first ride on the RS, just learned Jerez, what a circuit, great place to chuck a bike around, and what better to chuck the RS around. Instantly, it handles well, so exactly what they wanted, that commanding style. Bars are a bit too high for my liking, but actually it's workable. Tipping it into the first corner and then flicking and switching through the gears, exactly what you'd expect for the way they've sold the bike in terms of its handling. Slick gear changes, incredibly slick, and of course, you get to hear that raspy howl of the induction and of the triple, so it's mint, absolutely mint. So we are here in Jerez, and we've been thrashing around the Triumph Street Triple RS around this glorious circuit, and it's actually my first time on the triple, so I've never really got to kind of see or compare it to others, whereas you've got that kind of background and history and its evolution since what?
That's a polite way of saying I'm old.
2007?
2007, so the first one was essentially just a Daytona that they took the bodywork off. It was pretty simple, but it hit the mark, because the Daytona 675, that was just an awesome bike. And then they just made it a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more comfy, and turned it into a street bike, and we all just went, oh, that works. Yeah. That's bloody brilliant.
The thing that I think they've moved on from is giving it an even more of a sportier edge. Yeah. So with what we've just done today, I wasn't expecting it to be that capable on track. So even with the suspension as it was, as we rode out on it with it this morning, I was like, right, sound dialed into Jerez, or I call it Jerez.
It does it.
And then I was like, all right, I'm on apexes now. And exactly as they drew that power band, it's anywhere you are in that corner, it'll just drive out of it. Yeah. You know, as long as he doesn't have to sing top end. You can do it from 10, from 5.
If you make a mistake and you go like into the hairpin instead of going second, you come out in third, it'll pull it. It don't go blah and bog, it'll pull it. And again, some corners you can afford to use fourth instead of third rather than revving it in third. Yes. You can run it through in fourth. And every fault I'm finding of this bike is only because I want to go racing.
Correct.
So I'm riding it going, I want shift lights to be a bit bigger. Well, who wants shift lights to be bigger on a road bike? I need the bars to be a bit lower. I need a bit of bodywork. I want a screen. I want a bigger lap timer. And it's just, all I'm doing is converting it into the bike that Vicky won The bike that won Daytona, the bike that runs in Moto 2.
Exactly. And what I did, you'd consider changing the gearing for the circuit, which is not what this bike's about, but you hit the limiter between two corners.
Yeah.
And it's just such a friendly intercept. Right, let's go. And we're here.
And you almost use that as a marker. So you come out,
yes,
and then you're into the next.
Because you can chin off the brakes on a couple of them, because you're on the limiter and then send it in.
Yeah.
And then when you're in, I think before you had your suspension tuned up, you would kind of, I watched you kind of bounce on the way out.
Yeah, it just moves a little, but that was because, we're on standard tyres. We're not on SC1s, we're not on SC2s. We're on standard rubber with tyre warmers, and then I've done 4 sessions, and it was just starting to cook a bit, and I carry a little bit of timber. So it was just starting to move around, but when it does start to move, it's good. And then also the TC is on.
Yes.
And you see the light flash.
So it worked. So I was on the first hairpin, canted over a fair bit. And you can give it a fistful of throttle, not because I'm playing with traction control, but because it's not obliterating in terms of power.
No, it doesn't.
So
it doesn't retard the torque. It doesn't retard the ignition. There is no noise. Yeah. The only inclination that the TC is working, especially when you run the curve, if you're exiting with loads of curb,
they're little flashy lights.
Yeah, the light comes up. But if that light didn't come on, I don't think you'd know if the traction was on. It's incredible that we're both raving about how good this bike is around Jerez. And the lap times that we're doing, and we're both going, we want to go race this.
Yeah,
let's drop some
because
down.
it's hit the baseline, it's hit the mark, and it's a capable sports
and it's
bike.
11 grand.
Yeah,
it's an £11,000 naked bike that you can pass your test, jump on it, put it in rain mode, ride to the shops.
Exactly.
It's filled that hall of all the 600s that have gone. It's for me, when you compare it to 600s. But what we need to do tomorrow is see what it's like on the road, because this is perfect.
Yep.
Time warmers, Jerez. Perfect weather.
Good stick, the tarmac sticky, you can get on with it.
And then, so it'll be interesting to try the R tomorrow. So,
a bit more balance.
Yeah, really competition tomorrow.
I'll do my best.
Okay.
It's the end of day one, and I've learnt 2 new things. One, that Jerez is an absolutely fantastic circuit, and 2, the Triumph Street Triple RS is a little bit of a track weapon. So firstly, I watched a few onboards in order to prepare for this session, and Jerez is, it is just brilliant. If you can do a track day here, I'd say book it immediately. Cork River circuit, they haven't changed it since they built it, and it's absolutely mint. And what makes it even more mint is that you can happily throw a 765 around it and have a ball of a time. I'll try and be a bit more specific as to why I'm so chuffed. I did 3 sessions. First session, went out trying to know the circuit, trying to ride the bike. Obviously there's a camera on my mouth and there's loads of absolute screaming as I'm just tipping it in, figuring out where the apexes are, figuring out what the hairpins do. But it was just a genuine blast. The novelty value is high, the triple was singing, happy. And then we move on to the second and third session where I could start dialing it in. And what's fascinating is that I could actually start dialing in. So this is a road bike that I could then adjust to be track capable. And I was starting to connect my corners. So there's exits became entries and it started to flow. And I was like, I'm on point here. This is handling and this is a road sports bike. It's kind of what Triumph was saying. So they've raised the seat height to just give it a slightly nose down posture. And Triumph described it as a commanding riding style. Yeah, I was in command of it. What I enjoyed, because it's a road bike, you can lock on the front and the back skips around and then you can send it into a hairpin and on the way up and look out and then you just whack open the throttle because it's got the traction control there for you. And it's not stupid power, it's power that you can use all of it. So the RS comes with a slightly better suspension system than the R does, and that really did pay off today. So we've got fully adjustable Showa forks at the front, like separately adjustable, and then we've got Öhlins STX system on the back. And what that meant was, with a slightly raised seat height, I just felt planted. You can just give it the beans, and you sit well within that power band, but it just pulls. So you've got a torque to tap into and power to tap into, but it's really clean. It's not like a peak. It's just a clean, linear drive, absolute drive. It just feels sharp. With it in sport mode, the throttle response, you just have to get used to the fact that it is dialed in to be a little bit sharper. But when you let it settle, and it is subtle, and you can hold a line through a corner and then bang, you can feel it on its backstop, and then the launch, the absolute launch of all that singing triple is brilliant. It's brilliant. What really opened my mind was the fact that in the last session we tightened up the suspension a little bit. So this is the suspension you can buy, road ready. Okay. It dips much less on the front. And it became an even more accurate and sharp and precision engineered bike. The dive on the front was much less. It stuck to its line even better than it was before. And that's because on the suspension that Triumph have chosen, it's become this track ready bike. And how is it that I'm trying to chase lap times on something that's so versatile? Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So it's the end of day one. Track time is now sadly finished. Goodbye, Jerez. But what I am going to see is all this good stuff, this goodness, the suspension, electronics, the riding feel, the commanding style, the agility, everything that Triumph are saying. What's it really like on the road? With the start of day two, I now just left Jerez. I am on the Triumph Speed Triple R this time. So this is the slightly more road orientated version of the Street Triple. It's the end of my 2 days on the Street Triple R and the RS. As a racer, I thought that I'd be set on the RS, but actually when I sat on the R on the road, I was like, well, it doesn't have the latest Brembo kit on it and I might not feel as punchy or as powerful. Yeah, I was wrong. I really enjoyed my time on the R, and that's because at baseline standard, the engines are fundamentally the same. There's a different mapping on the R, which gives it 118 brake horsepower, so 10 brake less than the RS. What we did today was basically razz it around these little Spanish B roads, cutting in and out of towns, sending it over some kind of, not quite mountain tops, but climbing. And it just handled, delivered. What Triumph have achieved here is like a Goldilocks of bike. It does everything really, really well. Everything's about right. And when I say about right, I mean, it's got that agility, that poise, the engine is responsive. You don't have to even use all the gears. You can just work in and out of that power band and be really happy and be delighted with that lovely, raspy triple sound. Slick gear changes, really well handling, very capable, use it for the shops, use it to send it. I didn't think the R was for me, but if I'm never really going to take it to the track, probably is. With the 2023 model, the Triumph engineering team have done more than just a lick of paint on the 765. So you've got quite revised internal geometry. They've updated the pistons, now that they have it kind of beautifully machined at the top. They've changed the conrod, they've changed the gudgeon pins, they've changed the camshaft, they've changed the valves, and they've been able to basically increase your cylinder pressure, and that's increased your combustion efficiency, and they've added like a more free-flowing exhaust. So what that's done is really, really tighten up the 765, give it that significant increase in power and made it crispier, brought the response on. One of the things that was kind of rammed down on X a bit during the Triumph presentation was how much racing lineage the 765 has. I actually realised that there's much more of a connection that you might get with other brands. Like obviously there's a huge development with Moto 2, it's been to the Isle of Man, Daytona 200 has been phenomenally successful, but they really have brought on the connection between this 765 and what is actually being used out on circuits and winning out on circuits. It's more than just like trickle down technology. Where they're building those race engines is where they're designing what sits in these bikes. We can all aspire to have the Moto 2 version, but you kind of have that drumbeat, that heart inside one of these triples. What also has been changed is the gear ratios. Slightly taller, longer gear, but slightly shorter second, third, fourth, probably fifth and sixth. There's some minor adjustments. What that's meant, it's brought the 765 back into, I believe, like hooligan territory. This is the first silencer, like standard stock silencer, where I've not wanted to just rip it off the bike straight away. I was going through tunnels on these back B roads on the R, and I still wanted to pull the clutch in and just make it sing. So it's like a bike that wants you to misbehave a little bit. I just want to draw your attention to how the bike looks. It's actually really, really hard to make a naked bike look refined because you don't have that much fairing to play with. It's hard to kind of create a distinguishable shape. Starting with the tank, obviously they've redesigned it, 15 litres worth, and it has this kind of sculpted front, and when you're sat on it, you can see these bars, these kind of horns that come up in front of you. It's a little bit subjective, but I'm a fan of that headlight assembly, accompanied with the Triumph headlight finisher, so just around that air intake, you've got that detail. It's neat, it's not exposed, pros. I think circular headlights can date a bike, and what they've created is kind of a sharp angular front that this bike really needed. When you jump between the R and the RS, one of the biggest things you immediately notice is the TFT screen. The R has this multi-instrument display with a much smaller TFT in the middle of it, whereas the RS has this much larger TFT. And somehow the R is actually easy to read. You get more of a traditional kind of, obviously not analog, but it grows like a rev counter, whereas the RS has got this kind of growing, almost like a butterfly wing effect as the rev counter increases. I actually prefer the TFT on the R, to be totally honest. The RS has 5 modes, whereas the R has 4, so what's the difference? Well, the RS has got a track mode, but the rest of the 4 are the same between both of them. So you've got road, sport, rain, and then a user customizable one. But it's just worth bearing in mind that the traction control and the ABS features are bespoke to each mode, so but depending on which bike you have. If you're worried about not getting the very best suspension package if you get an R and not an RS, do not worry about it. If it's not your intent to take one of these triples to the track, the standard system that comes with the R is absolutely perfect. They've got it right. The RS, definitely worth having those extra features, because if you want to dial it into the track and start putting some lap times down, then that's exactly what it's there for. But road-wise, handled fine, dealt with the bumps, stuck me to the road, and I was genuinely happy with it. There's also a difference in the brakes package you get between the two models. The R has like a stock master cylinder along with the Brembo M432 caliper blocks, and then on the RS you've got the Brembo Master along with the Stylemma caliper block. What is also identical about the two bikes is the up and down quick shifter. Absolutely slick, seamless gear changes. I don't think it missed a beat. Where I might have been slightly dismissive on the R, having the opportunity to ride it and in some cases absolutely send it on the road, where everything about it is just right, and just right in a kind of refined and, exactly as Triumph said, commanding way. Even the seat height, which I thought would be too far recessed, still gives you that kind of sporty attitude if you want to go and send it a bit. But then I can see long distance touring happening on it with all the 50 accessories that Triumph have to offer. So it's come to the end of my 2 days. The sun is setting on what has been an absolutely fantastic experience. Having never ridden the Triumph 765s before, I can see how both bikes operate in as 2 packages depending on what you'd want as a rider. As a racer, I thought I'd be sold on the RS, but actually in day-to-day real-world riding conditions, the R is an absolutely fantastic bike. Brilliant experience. It's not all about spending more money on suspension, and you can have a great time on the R.